discussing the important MCQs, just share this session to all of your friends, to colleagues, okay, so that maximum number of the peoples, maximum number of our bankers can join with us in this session. And just to use your pen and paper, because if you're finding anything is important, you can just write down that. The very important thing I just want to tell you is that the whatever the questions we are going to discuss, like in these kind of the sessions, you are going to learn the different concept, and that is a very important thing of these kind of the sessions. Okay, so before to proceed, I just want to say, if you're new on the Officers Adda 247, just hit the subscribe button so that you can get regular update from our side, and download the Adda 247 application so that you can get everything at a one place. Okay, and one update also from outside that our target batch is actually running, so you can just enroll in a target batch and just can gear up your preparation towards the JAIIB examination, because we not only prepare you for the 50 marks, we actually prepare you for the 70 plus 80 plus marks in the examination. Okay, the very important thing that in this batch you are going to get, or whatever the batches that you are just going to find in the Adda 247 store into the JIB SEBI section, like bilingual as well as the English medium batches, you will just going to see like the ebooks, mock tests, live classes, recorded classes, everything you are going to get like in these kind of the batches. Okay, you only have to use the code that is Y422, and with this code you are going to get the big discount on all the batches. Okay, on the all the batches, mock test, ebooks, where you just only have to apply the code Y422. You just do not need to pay the full amount, right? So just use this code and just enroll fast if you just wish for clearing your examination in the June session. Okay, so let's start today's class with the very first question and just try to solve by your side, and just tell me what will be the answer of this question. If I talk about authorized capital of the company is divided into the 5 lakh shares and the 10 rupees each. Okay. It issued 2 lakh shares and public applied for the 2 lakh 60,000 shares. So amount of the issued capital, that would be what? And that kind of the question definitely would be asked in the examination. So you just have to prepare like how to solve these kind of the question in the examination. In a very simple way, I just want to tell you here that whenever we're talking about the term that is issuance capital, okay, the term that is issuance capital, you have to understand and respect for the company. That means if we are talking about what would be the issued capital, okay, so you have to understand the issued capital, that means issuance against that the issuance of the shares by the company. Okay, so you can understand if company issued the 2 lakh shares, right? So issued capital, that would be your, that would be 2 lakh, and that would be multiplied by the your, because the face value of the every share that is 10 rupees, so just multiply with that and you will get the value here, that would be the 20 lakh rupees. Okay, so that would be your answer for the issued capital, right? So issued capital, you have to understand the issuance capital for the when the company just issued the share, so that capital you have to calculate, and the correct answer of this, that would be the 20 lakh rupees, your correct answer. Okay, I'm hoping that you just understood this, right? So if I say that authorized capital that is given, that is just divided, because it is the maximum limit for which the company actually issued the share, but company issued the shares for the 2 lakh rupees, but it is oversubscribed, public actually subscribed for the 2 lakh 60,000 shares. So you can understand what will be the issued capital here. So you can understand the issued capital, that would be the 2 lakh shares, and the every share value, that is a 10 rupees each. So you can understand how much value of it would be, that would be the 20 lakh rupees, the correct answer of this. Okay, I'm hoping that everyone just understood this. So right, now the next question. I hope everyone just a minute. Okay, so just here you have to just find out like what would be the value of your debt equity ratio. So how to calculate these kind of the question, just try to understand. Look, whenever we are talking about like we have to calculate the debt equity ratio, so you have to understand a very first thing, that what is the formula for the debt equity ratio. And the very important thing in the ratio analysis chapter, you just do not need to memorize any kind of the ratios. Okay, if I'm talking about the debt equity ratio, you can understand it is all about the long term liabilities. Okay, long term liabilities, and it is divided by the equity, or you can also understand as a shareholders fund, right? it is also understandable as a shareholders fund. Okay, the concept behind the debt equity ratio I actually explained you in the previous session, and the concept of this issuance of the capital, paid up capital, that I also just explained you in the previous sessions. Okay, so just try to just note down everything. Okay, whatever the important things I'm just explaining, just try to note down that, so that, because it is a very important. So whenever we're talking about like the company, just if we just talking about the ratio analysis, so here you can understand it is all about like the debt and equity. Okay, so if I have to just formulate this, like what will be the formula for the debt equity ratio, so you can understand the debt that related to the long term liabilities, because whenever we talk about the debt, there may be the short term debt and there may be the long term debt. Now the question is which debt we have to choose. Okay, so whenever we are talking about like the if any company have to consider, like if the company just want to know the position of its company, that company and the investor what will see, that will see the long term liabilities of the company, and based on that he or she just will make the judgment related to the companies. Okay, so that you can understand whenever we are talking about the debt and we are just formulating the debt equity ratio, so you can understand the debt that we have to consider the long term liabilities or long term the borrowings of that divided by the equity you can also understand as a share, or like the shareholders fund, right? Now if I just talk about here, the long term borrowings are given, other long term liabilities are given, like long term provisions are given, share capital given, reserves and surplus are given. So how to calculate this? Okay, so if I say the long term liabilities, how to calculate this, so you can just understand, uh, just right here, that would be considered as a long-term liabilities. Now just understand, if I say the long-term borrowings, so what we will consider, that also be considered as a long-term liabilities, right? So that would be equal to the 4 lakh rupees. Just write down here, plus other long-term liabilities that is given here, also just maintain, here also just given the long, and instead of the long, if the word that is given the non. Okay, or you can also understand as a non-current liabilities that is given, that also considered as a long-term liabilities. Okay, so either it is given as a long-term liabilities, that actually given as a like the in a very straight way, and if the information that is given in the form of the non-current liabilities or other non-current liabilities, so you also have to consider there that it would be just a long-term liabilities. Okay, that both are the same. That means if I'm just talking about here that if you just explain here like how to just write that, so you can just understand here, if I'm just talking about the non-current. Okay, if I'm talking about the non-current and if I'm talking about the long term, both are the same. Okay, right? Okay, so now 4 lakh that would be just added with the other long term liabilities, that would be the 40,000. Just right here, that is 40,000 plus. Now the long term provisions, okay, that is also kind of the liabilities, right? So that is also would be added here, so that would just become the 5 lakh rupees. That would become the 5 lakh rupees, that would be your liabilities, right? Now if I talk about the share capital, okay, share capital and reserve and surplus, both related to what, both related to your equity part, or you can also understand the shareholders fund. What would be the value of this? That would be the value of this, that would be the 15 lakh. So what, how we can just write this, that would be considered as a 5 lakh rupees and that would be considered as a 15 lakh rupees. Okay, so now if I have to just calculate, so you can understand this is 1 by 3, or you can also understand as a, that would be the 0.33 is to 1. Okay, that would be the ratio for this kind of the question. I'm hoping that everyone just understood this, right? So this is how we actually solve the questions in the examination too, right? So here the only thing that you have to consider, sometimes in the question the correct the you have to understand whenever we are talking about the total asset and whenever we are talking about the total liabilities, so you can understand the information can be given like in the straight way or indirect way. Like you can understand, suppose it is given the current asset and it is just written here that is non-current asset, that we can understand the total asset, what that is current asset and the non-current asset. If I say the total liabilities, that is also the current liabilities and the non-current liabilities, right? Okay, that also be just understandable as a current liabilities and the non-current liabilities. Now you can understand a very important thing. Whenever we are talking about the current asset, so you have to understand the current, that is nothing but a short term, and whenever we are talking about the non-current asset, that is nothing but the long term. Okay, so now the very important thing, if the long term borrowings are given, so that's okay. And but if the instead of the long term, if it is given the like the non current liabilities, so that you have to consider, that is also understandable as a long term, right? So I'm hoping that now it is understandable, that how to calculate this. The correct answer of this, that would be the C. I'm hoping that everyone just understood this. Next question. Equity share capital, that is given, and the reserve and surplus, that is also given, the total asset, that is given, and you have to calculate the proprietary ratio. Okay, whenever we are talking about the proprietary ratio, so you have to understand the proprietary ratio is all about the like the shareholders funds related to the net asset of the company. Okay, so whenever we are talking about like proprietary ratio, so you have to understand it is nothing but the shareholders funds, and it is just divided, or say it is just related to the net assets of the company. Okay, net assets, or you can also just consider the total assets. Okay, so whenever we are talking about like the shareholders, for what we understand by the proprietary ratio, what it means that, so you can understand the shareholders fund, that is just related to the net asset. And you can also understand in a very simple way, now if I'm just talking about what would be the value of the shareholders fund, because if I talk about the equity share capital, reserve and surplus, both just comes under the head of the shareholders fund. Okay, so now if we just add this, because this is a part of your shareholders fund, or you can also understand as an equity, right? So if I just add here, so 15 lakh plus 7 lakh 50,000, that would be equal to the 20 lakh 50,000 rupees, right? Now it would be divided by the net assets, or you can also just consider here total asset, so that would be given here the 45 lakhs rupees. Okay, now if I have to just find out what would be the proprietary ratio, so what it would be, that you can just see here, that is actually just a 1/2, or you can also understand as a either a 0.5, or you can also just write as a 50%. Okay, so what it means the 50%, what we understand by this, like if the proprietary ratio that actually equals to the 50%, what it means, that it means that the 50% of the like the total assets, like the 50% actually financed by the shareholders funds in the company. Whatever the net assets, whatever the total assets the company is having, the 50% actually financed by the shareholders funds, you can understand by this. Okay, I'm hoping that everyone is just understanding this. Okay, just hit the like button and share this video to your friends, so that maximum number of our bankers actually can join with us in this session also. Okay, so this is how actually we have to solve the questions, right? Okay, so this is very important, because in the examination you may get the questions like where you have to just find out the proprietary ratio. So you have to understand like the proprietary ratio, whenever we are talking about the proprietary ratio, is all about the shareholders fund, that is actually related to the net asset of the company, or you can also just consider the total asset of the company. So this is how actually we solve. Okay, right. So here the very important thing I just want to tell you here, that the if the value that is the 50%, then you can just understand this, this would be equal to your, this would be equal to your what, this would be considered as like the 50% of the total asset of the company is actually financed by the shareholders fund, that is the proprietary ratio. The correct answer, that would be the A here. Okay, Next question. So next question is about where the sales is given, sales returns are given, cost of goods sold is given, and you have to find out the gross profit ratio. So how to find out the gross profit ratio? And if I'm just talking about the gross profit and the gross profit ratio, you are going to get the so many questions based on this in the examination. So this topic is a very important to understand. Whenever we are talking about the gross profit ratio, so it is nothing but the gross profit, and it would be divided by the net sales, right? So if I'm talking about, like, the options are given in the percentage, so you can also just multiply with the 100. That actually just depends on the options. Okay, so if I just talk about the gross profit ratio, we have to find out. So you will understand the gross profit ratio is nothing but the gross profit, and it is divided by the net sales, and it would be multiplied with the 100. Okay, no, if I'm talking about the gross profit, the very first thing that we have to find out here, gross profit. So how to find out the gross profit here? So you will understand the formula for the gross profit, that is all about the net sales minus cost of goods sold, right? Now, if I'm talking about the sales is given and the sales returns are given, okay, that you can understand. Suppose that this is A and this is B, right? And suppose that we are talking about the all information that is given in the terms of the A. Okay, so suppose that A actually made the sale, but some products actually just returned, like, from the buyer, okay, to this A. So you can understand the net sales that would be actually equals to the 4 lakh rupees, right? So the net sales that actually would be equals to the 4 lakh rupees. So you can understand, you have to just write here the 4 lakh and minus the cost of goods sold value, that is given the 3 lakh 20,000, just right here. So the gross profit that would be equal to the 80,000 rupees. That would be the value of the gross profit. So suppose that the question is for, like, the cost, like the opening stock is given, closing stock is given, purchase is given, direct expenses are given. There's so many informations there is given, and you have to find the cost of goods sold, and respect of that you also have to find out the gross profit. So these kind of the question you actually get in the examination in the 2 marks. So you have to just know about that what is the formula for the gross profit and what is the formula for the cost of goods sold actually. Okay, so now that we actually find out the gross profit here. So if I'm talking about that, we have to just find out the gross profit ratio. So we know the gross profit that is actually equals to the 80,000, like here we are just going to get, and the net sales that is equals to your 4 lakh. Just right here the net sales that equals to the 4 lakh. So if I just multiply with the 100 here, so you will get like the 5 in the denominator side. So that would be equal to the 20%. The correct answer of this question, that would be the A. Okay, so this is how we actually have to solve in the examination all the questions. Okay, I'm hoping that everyone just understanding and everyone just gaining some confidence related to the accounting subject. Next question. If applicants for you can understand, if applicants for 80,000 shares were allotted 60,000 shares on a pro rata basis, and the shareholder who was allotted 1,200 shares must have applied for. Okay, so you have to understand, whenever we are talking about a case of the pro rata basis, that the case is all about the over subscription, over subscription cases. Okay, where you have to understand, whenever the share is actually oversubscribed, or whatever the shares is just issued by the company and the shares is actually oversubscribed by the public. So in that case we actually just use a pro rata basis. On that basis we actually allotted the shares to the public. Okay, and you can understand, if in a very simple way we have to understand that how to just calculate these kind of the, like, the questions in the examination. So you can understand, if the applicant for the 80,000 shares were allotted 60,000 shares on a pro rata basis, that simple math that you have to use here, the 80,000 shares and with respect to the 60,000 shares is actually just allotted. So you can understand, for every 4 shares, actually the 3 shares that is given. Just understand, if I'm just writing here, that is 80,000 is to 60,000, right? So 80,000 shares, that means for every 80,000 shares the 60,000 shares were allotted. So you can understand, it is the ratio of the 4 is to 3. In a very simple term we have to understand, for every 4 shares actually 3 shares are allotted. right? So if I just talk about, if any shareholder who has applied for the 1200 shares, so what would like how much amount of the shares that he has just applied for, you have to just find out here. So you can understand, for every 4 shares, actually the 3 shares allotted, and if any person just allotted with the 1200 shares, that means he actually applied for how many shares, we have to find out. So you will just definitely have to solve this question like in this way, that three, like the value of the three, that is 1200. So what would be the value of the four? You can understand that the value of the three, that is the 1200. So that means one of the value of the one, that would be equal to the 400. That means the four, like if we just four multiply with the 4 into the 400, then you will get the value, that would be the 1600. The correct answer, that would be the C in this case. Okay, the very important thing in, like after watching this session, you have to understand, whenever you are going to see this word like the pro rata, you have to understand the pro rata case is all about the over subscription case. Okay, so in this, if anyone just allotted, if anyone, like if you're talking about for any person, if just applied for the 1200 shares, so that means company, like the 1600 shares, so that means company actually allotting the 1200 shares only to that person. Okay, because now company just using the pro rata basis or allotment process just based on the pro rata basis. Okay, so this is how we actually have to solve the questions in the examination too, right? Now, next question: which ratio explains that how much portion of the earning is distributed in the form of the dividend? Okay, so which ratio explains that how much portion of the earning is distributed in the form of the dividend? The correct answer of this question, that is the payout ratio. That would be the correct answer of this question, the payout ratio. The payout ratio actually explains that how much portion of the earning is distributed in the form of the dividend. That would be the correct answer of this question. Okay, right. Now next question: the asset of the business can be classified as, whenever you're talking about the asset, like I just explained you, whenever you have to just divide the asset, the current asset and the non-current asset. And the very important thing I also explained you, that current you always have to understand as a short term, and the non-current you always have to understand as a long term. Now if I talk about the very important asset, that is a fixed asset. So you have to understand, whenever you purchase a fixed asset, you just never assume that you are just going to sell within a 1 year that asset. Okay, so that kind of the asset you have to understand, or fixed asset is actually purchased for the long time purposes. Okay, so that's why the fixed asset is actually understandable as a non-current asset. Okay, now if I just talk about the asset of the business can be classified as, so you just do not have to be confused by the options here. You know the concept that you should very strong with your basic concepts. So that's actually just I just tried for you guys. So the asset of the business can be classified as, the correct answer of this question, that would be the C, fixed and the current asset. Okay, that would be the correct answer for this question, right? Next question: the when opening stock is given, closing stock is given, cost of goods sold is given, and the stock turnover ratio, you have to find out. Whenever we are talking about a term, that is the inventory, okay, and the stock. So you just do not have to be confused between these two terms. Okay, you always have to consider these are the same, right? So whenever you're talking about the stock turnover, you can also understand this is nothing but the inventory turnover ratio. Okay, so you have to understand it is nothing but the inventory turnover ratio. And whenever we have to find out, like whenever we are talking about any ratio analysis, any ratio formulas, so what I told you, that just do not need to memorize any ratios formula. You will be able to just formulate by your own. How you can just formulate that? When we talk about the inventory turnover, you can understand the ratio is all about the inventory and the turnover, right? Okay, whenever we are talking about the turnover, you can understand the turnover, or you can also understand it is all about related to the sales, right? But in the accounting, we can understand that all of the stocks can actually just that all of the stocks just actually cannot sold. Okay, you just never just get the buyers every time. So you can understand there will be some stocks that also just left out in your factory. So that's why, for considering that, we can just consider the instead of the sales, we considering the cost of goods sold. So cost of goods sold is actually known as a cost of sales also. Okay, so that is also understandable as a cost of goods sold is actually understandable as a term, that is a cost of sales. Okay, so that means what is the sales, what is the cost of what we actually sold out. Okay, so that is known as a cost of sales. Now when we talk about the inventory turnover ratio, turnover that is related to the sales, and in the accounting that all just stock just do not or you can also understand just cannot just sold out. Okay, so you can understand instead of the sales we actually just considering the cost of goods sold and inventory that actually appeared the two times in the financial year. The one time when we are talking about the opening inventory that in the initial financial year. Okay, and after that at the time of the closing year you can also understand there will be the closing inventory or ending inventory, you can also understand. So that the formula, if I have to just formulate here, that is the inventory turnover ratio, so that it would be equal to the cost of goods sold and it would be divided by the average inventory. Okay, so either say average inventory or you can also say the average stock. So cost of goods sold, actually it is given the value here, the 2,20,000 just right here, and the average inventory or the opening stock plus closing stock, and it is divided by the two. So you can understand it is actually given the 50,000 plus 60,000, and it would be divided by the 2. So now you can understand if the 2 just multiplied in the numerator side, so this will become the 4,40,000 and this will become the 1,10,000, right? So now what would be the value of this? That would be equal to the 4 is to 1, or you can also say it would be the 4 times, and that would be the correct answer for this question. Okay, so this is how we actually have to solve the questions in the examination. And if I just say here that like the cost of goods sold, gross profit ratio, okay, inventory turnover ratio, that all things that must come in the examination. So you have to understand in a very proper way that what the term and how we are just actually solving the questions. Okay, so that is a very important thing. Okay, I'm hoping that everyone just understanding this. Now the next question, that is which of the following items are considered as revenue for a business? So what would be the answer of this? Whenever we're talking about like which of the following items are considered as revenue for a business, so you have to understand, if I just talk about the sales. Okay, so sales actually generate the revenue for the company, right? And whenever we're talking about the sales, it is actually the two kinds of the sale in the your business, that you can understand, the one that is on the credit and another one that is on the cash. Okay, so if I talk about the credit sale and another is about the cash sale, so you can understand the in the both items, like the if I talking about the credit sales and if I talking about the cash sales, that actually considered as a revenue for the business. Okay, so that is important, because if I just talking about it is just a credit sale, that means the debtors, you actually creates the debtors. Okay, and debtors is also considered as an asset for your company, as well as a cash is also considered as an asset for your company. Okay, so I'm hoping that everyone just understanding this, right? Now the next question, any business event that is measurable in terms of the money and can also be recorded in the accounts book is called what? Whenever we're talking about any business event that is measurable in terms of the money, so you can understand that whenever we are talking about like any business term, so you understand a term that the business transaction. Okay, so the correct answer, that will be the business transaction here, because the business transaction is actually measurable in the terms of the money and can also be recorded in the account book. Okay, so the correct answer of this, that would be the transaction. That is a very important question, by the way, because these kind of the question actually confused you in the examination. So that's why you should just focus on, okay, or focus on these kind of the questions as well. Okay, so now I just want to tell you that our target batch and our so many batches that actually running in our Adda 247 store, and you can just enroll in our batches and just can get up your preparation with us. You only have to use the code, that is Y422, and with this code you're going to get the big discount on any kind of the batches, on any kind of the mock test ebooks you are going to purchase that. Okay, so as well as you can also enroll in the test, or you enroll for the test packs, and because it actually gives the final test to your preparation, so you only have to use the code by422 in this as well. Okay, and these kind of the things are very important if you just want to just clear your examination with a good marks in this upcoming session of the JIB. Okay, so thank you everyone for joining me in this session, and I hope you all have a great day ahead. And like this video if you're liking our effort, and share this video to your friends, and subscribe the channel so that you may get regular update from our side. Okay, so thank you everyone for joining me here.